This morning, I want to talk about why we come to church. Tell your neighbor, come to church. The definition for church in the, whatever it is, dictionary, is a building for public Christian worship. The verb is to conduct or bring to church, especially for special services. How many of you guys know here that we are the church? Yes, it is customary to call a building a church, but when we come to church, we are the church. And there's been a bit of a trend to, especially with streaming, which streaming is awesome. If you're homesick with your children, you can still participate, at least in the teaching. You can't participate in many things, which I'm going to touch on today, but you can participate with the teaching. How many of you have availed of the streaming at home? A couple of you. So I'm reminded of a couple of stories, and I'm hoping when Sarah gets back in here, she can share hers. Who remembers Avery? Very first time he ever came to church, somebody at BIW had told him about Apostle John and his church. And the very first time he ever came, during the service, just during the service, the presence of God hit him and his back was healed. And he came up to my husband afterwards because that was not on his grid, that God actually is alive now and does miracles and healings. And he was healed. His back was all better just from being in the church service. So he talked to my husband, asked my husband if he'd go to coffee, and of course my husband went to coffee. And later, I had come back from a One Thing conference at IHOP KC, and I was talking to Avery just before the service, and I was trying to explain to him who Todd White is. Who knows who Todd White is? Like just about everybody does now. And so I just said to Todd, I went over to him and I said, this is what Todd said to Avery, this is what Todd White does. He'll go up to a stranger and he'll say, you had an injury in your shoulder playing football when you were in high school. And this person who is a stranger will be like, how did you know that? And they're so freaked out. And he said, the Lord just told me. And he said, if I pray for it, you'll be healed. Is it okay if I pray for it? And so I just told Avery that, and Avery's like, oh, okay, and then we started church. So we had church, and at the end of church, Avery came up to me, and this is so funny. If you guys remember Avery, he had the funniest look on his face when he came up to me, and he said, Pastor Linda, do you realize that I had an old shoulder injury playing football in high school? And he took my hand, and he had put my hand on his bone. There's a bone that was actually sticking up that never healed properly. I could feel it. And immediately, I didn't. So me explaining to him who Todd White was actually the Lord having a word of knowledge, and I didn't even realize it. And so immediately faith rose, and I said, do you want to be healed of that right now? We were over here, and I grabbed Bella, and he said, yeah. Bella and I prayed for that, and it instantly went down and was healed. You could hear it. You could feel it. It was the neatest, coolest, like, out-of-body, wow, God's really real, and he's doing this. And Avery, who isn't religious at all, church is over, you guys are all talking. Avery starts yelling, everybody, I have to tell everybody, God just healed me. It was so cool. But, if Avery had never come or Avery stayed home, wouldn't have happened.